I walked past my computer and saw my daughter furiously clicking the keyboard, her fingers slamming every key with power. I leaned over and realized she was typing a comment under a video of a 10-year-old boy playing video games. "I'm gonna punch you so hard you're going to cry. I know where you live." She pressed the enter key, but before I could tell her to stop, I saw something that made me grip my desk. She had posted the comment under my YouTube account, which had videos of me gaming on it. I immediately got her off the chair and opened my comment history, then started hysterically laughing because if I didn't, I would cry. She'd left hundreds of comments under videos of little kids. "I'm gonna beat you up. I'm coming for you. I'm hiding in your closet." She had accidentally made it look like me, a 34-year-old, was threatening kids online. I immediately went to start deleting the comments, but then my doorbell rang. 2 officers walked into my house. "We need to search your computer. We've heard suspicious activity from it." My legs froze as I led them to my computer, trying to explain everything. But the comment, "You look punchable," was already open under my account, making me look even worse. They glanced once at the screen and began putting cuffs on me. I screamed, "It wasn't me. My daughter left these comments." She came running and begged the officers to believe me, screaming it was her, but they kept walking me out. That's when I remembered that every time I logged into my PC, my webcam automatically started recording my face for my gaming videos. I begged the cops to check the footage, and they reluctantly pulled it up. We watched my daughter hop in my chair with a grin and type manically for hours at a time. The timestamps of the videos matched when the comments were left. The officers apologized and walked out, and as I started deleting everything, my daughter tapped my shoulder. "Was my trolling at least funny, Dad?" My mom swore our dog would never set foot in the house, until the night someone broke in changed her mind for good. Mom grabbed her purse on her way out, the first time she'd ever left me home alone, and stopped in the doorway. "Don't let anybody in the house, and the dog stays outside." Then she was gone. I went out back to say goodnight to Hank, curled up in the doghouse where he'd slept ever since she hammered a 2x4 over the doggy door. He tripped over his own paws, scrambling up to lick my face. "Goodnight, buddy. Wish you could come in." I gave him one last pat, went inside, and crawled into bed. I was almost asleep when glass shattered in the kitchen. My eyes shot open, and my heart was pounding. Footsteps crept down the hall. I slid off the bed and pressed myself against the closet door, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The burglar searched my parents' room. Then the footsteps came back and stopped outside mine. A flashlight beam cut under my door. I slapped a hand over my mouth and held my breath. The doorknob started to turn. A baseball bat leaned in the corner of the closet and I lunged for it. Just as my hand closed around it, a massive crack split the silence, then splintering wood, then furious barking tearing down the hall. My door burst open and Hank flew into the man like a missile, knocking him flat. The man screamed. I stayed frozen in the closet while Hank clamped onto his leg and dragged him backward out of the room. The man clawed at the carpet, but Hank hauled him down the hall and into the living room. I got there just as he ripped free and crashed back out the broken kitchen window. I dropped down and threw my arms around Hank while he licked my face and wagged his tail. The cops caught him a few blocks away, following the blood trail. When my parents got home, Mom's eyes went from Hank to the splintered 2x4 on the kitchen floor, to me holding him on the couch. Without a word, she pulled the good blanket out of the closet and laid it at the foot of my bed. Hank has slept there every night since. While cat-sitting for my neighbors, I let their indoor cat out the front door, and by midnight I was sure I had gotten her killed. The Arnolds had left me a note on the kitchen counter written in bold letters. "Astrid has never been outside, and she hates it. Do not open the front door without checking where she is first." I read the note 3 times. Then my delivery driver showed up with the pizza I ordered. I pulled the door open without looking down, and Astrid went out between his legs, like she had been waiting her whole life for that exact moment. I dropped the pizza on the porch and went after her. She ran under a row of hedges along the side of the house. I got down on my stomach and reached in. She wasn't there. I checked under the deck and behind the trash cans. I knocked on a door down the block. A guy in a hoodie pulled out his phone before I finished asking and showed me a video from his porch camera. A coyote was walking down the street with something limp in its mouth. They come through almost every night now. They ate 2 cats on this block last month. He tapped my shoulder. I'd start looking now if I were you. I went back to the Arnold's house as fast as I could. I put a bowl of tuna on the back patio and turned off the kitchen lights so I could watch the yard from the window. Around 10, I heard a howl somewhere past the back fence, then another one answering it from a different direction. Around 10:30, I saw something move at the edge of the yard. It was too big to be a cat. I flipped the porch light on, and whatever it was gone. The tuna bowl was on its side and empty. I refilled it and went back to the window. At 11, I heard a rustle in the bushes and ran outside with a stick I had been gripping all night. A possum looked up at me next to the bowl. I waved the stick at it until it walked off, and then somewhere down the block, a cat screamed. I ran out into the street holding the stick like an idiot. There was nothing there. No cat, no coyote, no movement under any of the cars. I walked back to the patio and called for Astrid until my throat hurt. By 12, I was at the kitchen table right writing the apology text I was going to send the Arnolds, telling them how Astrid might have gotten eaten by coyotes. Then all of a sudden, I heard a sound at the back door. It was a thin scratching, then a meow, then more scratching. I went to the door, and there was Astrid, sitting on the mat, looking up at me. Her paws were wet from the grass. She walked past me into the kitchen and went straight to her food bowl. I remembered the note. She has never been outside, and she hates it. She had spent the whole night out there hating it, hiding from things that wanted to eat her, and then she had come home on her own. I deleted the text, picked up the pizza box from the porch, and threw it in the trash. The Arnolds pulled in at 9 on the dot. Mrs. Arnold got out of the car and asked how the weekend had gone. Fine. Everything was fine. She handed me $80 in cash. I took it and walked out. Somewhere past the fence, a coyote howled, and I walked faster than I needed to. My uncle had spent 20 years hunting Bigfoot, and the first night I went with him, something barefoot walked through our campsite. At sunrise, we found a print beside the open cooler, almost twice the size of my boot, and pressed deep into the mud with 5 clear toes. 3 sausages were gone, and crushed ferns led uphill. My uncle dropped beside the print with his hands shaking. Do you understand what this means? A branch snapped above us, and something huge moved between the trees. So he grabbed his camera and whispered, "This is the night everyone stops laughing." We followed the tracks until they ended beside a tree with dark hair caught in the bark, and while my uncle sealed it in an evidence bag, something grunted deeper in the woods. That afternoon, we found split firewood stacked beside a creek, and even though the cuts were too clean for an animal, he insisted Bigfoot had learned tools. Then our food vanished. First the sausages, then the marshmallows, then an entire jar of peanut butter with the lid screwed neatly back on. That night, heavy footsteps circled the tent while my uncle aimed his camera at the zipper, and I held the bear spray against my chest. A huge shadow crossed the nylon, paused beside the fire, then moved away until the footsteps disappeared completely. My uncle lowered the camera, his face collapsing. 20 years, and I missed him. Then a metal spoon scraped the bottom of our peanut butter jar outside. The shadow rose again, wider than the tent door, and my uncle lunged for the zipper. "We've got him." He burst outside with the camera flashing, and the creature screamed. Not roared, screamed. My legs locked as a huge shirtless man spun around beside the fire holding our peanut butter and a spoon, hair covering his shoulders, chest, back, and most of his face. He wore hiking shorts, wool socks, and one sandal. "What is wrong with you people?" he yelled, covering himself while my uncle kept taking pictures. Behind him sat a normal campsite with a hammock, coffee pot, folding chair, and paperback face down on a stump. The footprints were his, the hair was his, and the grunting was him chopping wood. My uncle lowered the camera. "You're not Bigfoot?" The man stared at him. "I'm Gary." He pointed to a sign nailed to a tree. "Private campsite. Please leave Gary alone." The fear drained out of me so fast, I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Gary screwed the lid onto our peanut butter and disappeared into the woods muttering, "Every single summer." My grandma solved an escape room by cleaning it, and we spent the first 40 minutes begging her to stop. We took her for her 72nd birthday because my cousin Nate said she needed something exciting, and grandma said paying to be locked in a dusty room sounded like a punishment. The room was called The Haunted Study. Fake candles flickered on crooked shelves, cobwebs hung over a tea tray, and a portrait of a creepy old man tilted over the fireplace. The employee started the timer. "You have 60 minutes to escape." Grandma grabbed a tissue from her purse and wiped a teacup. Nate groaned. "Grandma, that's not a clue." She set the cup back on the tray anyway, and a drawer clicked open behind us. Everyone froze. Grandma pointed at the dust on the saucers. "You're welcome." Nate found a riddle under the desk and shouted about moon phases while Grandma folded the blanket on the couch and shook a key onto the floor. My sister tried matching wallpaper symbols, but Grandma started shelving books by height before we could copy the pattern. "Wait, those books were in order," Nate said, dropping to his knees as the timer slipped under 20 minutes. Grandma slid the last book into place anyway, and the numbers 418 appeared across the spines. "Stop touching things," Nate said, grabbing a brass compass from her hand. "This is an escape room, not your church basement." Grandma snatched it back, wiped the dust off, and the compass needle swung toward the clock. With 5 minutes left, we had 3 keys, 4 numbers, and 1 locked bookcase that still refused to open. Worse, Grandma had put away every loose prop. The missing feather went in a pen cup. The old letter was flattened under a paperweight. The extra teacup was back on the tray. Nate pressed both hands to his head. She cleaned our last clue into the furniture. For the first time, Grandma stopped moving. The speaker crackled. "Would you like a hint?" Nate slapped the wall button. "Yes." Grandma slapped his hand away. "No." She stood in front of the tea tray, lips tight, counting under her breath. "4 cups," she said. 5 saucers. I stared at the tray. 1 empty saucer sat under the clock painted on the tablecloth. Grandma picked up the cup she had wiped at the start, placed it on the empty saucer, and turned the handle toward the real clock on the wall. The locked bookcase groaned open. We ran through with 8 seconds left. The employee stared at the monitor. "You used no hints?" Grandma handed him the dusty tissue. "Next time, clean first." It was my 5th year in a row as a trained space mechanic when I was finally allowed into space in the rocket. My commander scoffed. "Looks like someone owed NASA a favor and sent us Bob the Builder to help." I ignored him and went to use the panels I'd spent 3 years in training on, and he shoved me away. "Calm down, son. You're just the mechanic, not a real pilot." He snapped the latch shut. "We'll let you know if the toilet needs plunging." I looked around and saw my entire crew with their arms crossed, rolling their their eyes at me, all making it clear they didn't trust me. As we launched into the sky, I smiled and crossed my arms back because I knew the moment was coming when I'd make them eat their words. 3 days in, I ran my hand along a seam in the back wall and felt it loose. "Sir, there's a weakness in the wall. It could be serious. I think you should take a look at it." But he didn't even look up. Leave the worrying to real astronauts. Before I could respond, a bang threw the cabin sideways. I turned around and saw the seam had already split open. The screen flashed red, cabin losing air. 60 seconds left. I lunged for the wall, but the commander shoved me back. "Get out of the way! You're making it worse!" He slammed every button on the panel, but the hissing only got louder because you can't push a button to fix a hole. The pilot froze, and the entire cabin went dead silent. The commander finally turned to me, his voice quieter than ever. "Can you fix it?" I pulled the tool roll he'd mocked, wedged into the gap behind the wall where no pilot fits, and got my hands on the crack I'd warned him about. I knew right where she was weak because I built her. I drove the seal into the seam and held it until the hissing died. The screen turned green, cabin sealed. The commander couldn't push a button to save them. The mechanic they laughed at did it with his hands. He keyed the radio to report it to the ground, and the whole world was listening. When we finally landed back on Earth, my entire team cheered me on to the public who'd all been waiting for us. "He saved our lives," my commander spoke through gritted teeth. I handed a woman her Uber Eats order and said, "Enjoy your meal." But as soon as she grabbed it, her face got angry and she threw the food to the wall behind me. She screamed, "Why did you throw my food everywhere?" I froze because that wasn't true. "Ma'am, you just threw it." But she was already snapping photos of the food on the wall, my face, and my car. I didn't understand why she would accuse me, and my balls hit the floor because I could lose my job over an obvious lie. She already had Uber Eats support pulled up on her phone, like she dialed it before, and screamed, "Yes, my driver threw my food everywhere. I want him fired and I want $100 in credit for this. This is unacceptable." I begged her, "Ma'am, please, this job is how I feed my kids. I can't lose my job." She put her hand over the phone and whispered, "I don't care about your stupid kids. I want my $100 credit so I can order crab legs tonight." Then she spun back around, sobbing so loud her neighbors started watching. A cop car rolled up from the commotion and asked the woman if there was a problem. She sobbed into her hands and pointed at the mess. "He did this." The officer pulled out a notepad. "Sir, this is destruction of private property. I'm going to need to speak to you in the station." I immediately put my hands up. "Please no, I didn't do anything." I felt my whole life slipping away over a lie. Just as the cop clicked his pen, a little kid wandered out the front door and looked at the crying woman. "Mom, are you doing the food thing again?" The woman immediately stopped crying, and everyone went quiet. The cop lowered his notepad. "The food thing?" The officer looked at her doorbell camera. "I'm going to need to see the footage on that." She held her phone tightly and refused, but the cop insisted. It played, her taking the food calmly, then chucking it at the wall the second I left. The little kid nodded. "Mom does this every day, but I don't want to eat crab legs again." She'd been scamming drivers all over the city for free credit. The cop pointed at the mess. "We'll be contacting Uber Eats. Now clean it up." As she got on her knees and started scrubbing, I smiled. "Enjoy your meal." The fat kid next door pounded on my door. "Have you seen my chocolate bar?" I opened up and he was already red in the face, jabbing a finger at my chest. "My Hershey's cookies and cream bar. The big white one. Someone ate it." I shrugged. "I haven't seen it." He immediately spun around and roared down the whole street. "Whoever ate my chocolate is dead. You hear me? Dead." Everyone on the street froze because we all knew whoever ate it was screwed. He crossed his arms. "Fine, I'll just have to find the criminal myself." He stormed into his house and came back outside with a remote-controlled drone and a roll of duct tape. More people gathered to watch as he started taping himself to the drone. "Whoever took it better watch out. I'm coming for you." In seconds, he launched himself into the air, scanning every backyard and screaming that the thief couldn't hide from him. Doors opened all down the street and people ran out waving their own chocolate bars up at him, trying to talk him down. Someone held up a fresh Hershey's and he swatted it clean out of the air. "It's not the same. I want mine." But the drone started sputtering under his weight, dipping toward the road while the duct tape started to peel. He looked around frantically. Watch out!" He started heading right towards me, and I sprinted so I wouldn't be the one to break his fall. He tumbled to the ground, and when I turned to get a closer look, I saw a corner of white wrapper poking out of his back pocket. "Check your back pocket," I shouted up at him. He reached back, yanked out a crushed empty Hershey's wrapper, and went still as the whole street fell silent. I ate it. Whoever ate it was screwed, and it was him. The drone gave one last sputter and pushed him straight into my bush, while his hand still gripped the empty wrapper. I put a padlock on my mini fridge because my little brother wouldn't stop stealing my snacks, and went to sleep feeling like a genius. But when I woke up, Bert was already in my chair munching on my Doritos. My padlock laid on the floor, picked with a bobby pin, and when I looked at my mini fridge, I realized Bert had put his own bigger padlock around it. The mini fridge is mine now. He took an obnoxiously loud bite of my favorite chili heatwave chips. Every crunch sounded like defeat, and I leapt out of bed because I wasn't going to be bested by my little brother. I grabbed Dad's bolt cutters and stormed back in. Here's a life lesson, lil bro. Shit ain't sweet. I cut his padlock in half while he was finishing the Doritos, and his face dropped mid-bite as his lock fell to the floor. That's when I laughed and opened my closet. I bought something stronger for this very reason. I pulled out a metal safe I'd calculated was big enough and put the mini fridge inside it. Bert's face dropped, and he immediately grabbed the bolt cutters and tried to cut into the corner of the safe, pressing so hard his whole body shook. I crossed my arms. Bolt cutters won't work on this, Bert. The mini fridge is mine. You can't beat your big brother. I grabbed the Doritos and began eating, but then Bert stood up and clenched his fists. Watch this. He came back in with Dad's angle grinder and pressed it against the safe. Nothing. Then he tried Dad's industrial handheld saw. The safe didn't even have a scratch. I laughed at him. You need the code to get in, and you're never getting it. But Bert's face turned into a smile. We'll see about that. He walked out, and 2 minutes later returned with a stick of dynamite. Pretty cool what you can find in Dad's shed. He placed the dynamite beside the safe and took out a lighter. Now what's the code? My face went pale, and I immediately put up my hands. Chill, Bert. My mouth was full of Doritos. It's not worth it. It absolutely is. He lit the fuse, and my hands trembled as Bert smirked. The code, lil boy. I dropped to my knees as it was seconds away from blowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bert blew out the dynamite right as it reached the end. He put in the code and the safe opened. He grabbed the mini fridge. Here's a life lesson, big bro. Bert's a bad man. Remember that. He carried the mini fridge to his room, while I looked at the stick of dynamite at my feet. My brother nearly blew us both up over some Doritos. I was watching LeBron highlights when I turned to my girlfriend and told her I wanted a LeBaby. She looked up from her phone. A what? A LeBaby. The next LeBron. Someone has to carry the torch. Doesn't he have his own kids? They couldn't hold it. Not like him. I grabbed her hands. Babe, I need you to see my vision. She finally nodded. That evening, I turned the guest room into a nursery, purple and gold, and ordered a newborn Lakers jersey with Braun on the back. I was committed to spawning greatness. That week, she signed up for yoga to strengthen her core for the LeBaby and started going almost every day. One afternoon, I swung by and caught her giggling at something her trainer Tyrone said. The second she saw me, she scrambled up and hugged me. I'm pregnant, baby. I was so happy I cried for an hour, then walked over and thanked Tyrone for helping us get pregnant. My girlfriend just smiled. He's really good at stretching me. I told him to book her extra sessions, so my LeBaby got the best treatment. 9 months later, I was in the delivery room, Lakers headband on, LeBron's hype speech on the TV while she pushed, tearing up before he came out. The doctor laid him on her chest, and her whole face crumpled. She yanked the blanket to his chin, eyes shooting to the door. I leaned in, froze, and held my pale arm against his. The colors weren't close. I looked at her, just as white, then back. We were both white. He was not. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand, my face cracking from confusion into a grin as I hopped in place. I see it now. She went pale, but I was already on my knees, hands to the ceiling. The Lee Divine heard me. I prayed for a LeBaby, and he sent me a LeBaby. I scooped him up like the championship trophy and held him to the light. Welcome to the world, Braun. My girlfriend exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for 9 months. But that's just what spawning greatness takes out of you. I yelled, I'm gonna get you, while playing tag, my fingers almost reaching Jake's back. But right as my fingers brushed against his sweater, a random woman yanked me back. I saw Jake get away, but when I looked at the lady, she was crying, staring right at me. I'm taking you to the police. You won't get away with this. She immediately grabbed me by my wrist and dragged me, but I had no idea what she was talking about. I slapped her hand. Lady, let go of me. I was so close, but she only gripped tighter, dragging me across the park while everyone stared. Then I noticed a little girl trailing behind her, looking at me terrified. She dragged me until she found a cop. The cop saw her red face and trembling hands and said, Ma'am, is everything all right? She pointed a shaking finger at me. He's dangerous. He tried to kidnap those kids at the park. Arrest him now. My jaw dropped. What? Me? My friends ran over. Are you in trouble? The cop looked at me, then at the hysterical woman, confused. I was playing tag with my friends, but she only got louder. Don't trust him. She pulled her daughter close. He's a danger to my daughter. I didn't understand why she was so upset, accusing me of something I obviously didn't do, and snapped, What the hell is wrong with you, lady? The cop put his hand up. Ma'am, he's a child. Tell me what's really going on, or I'm arresting you for harassing a minor. The whole park circled around her, and the woman's face crumbled as she dropped to her knees. A year ago, a man tried to kidnap my daughter from this park. Her voice was shaking. When he grabbed her, he said, I'm gonna get you. Every time I hear those words, she fell into her daughter, sobbing. The cop's face softened. She looked at me. I'm sorry. I'm still going to therapy for it. I felt bad for her. but I had a game to finish. I turned around, ran straight up to Jake, and tapped his back. Anyway, you're it. My grandpa said he was going to become the best Pokemon collector in his retirement home. It started because I brought some packs on a visit. I figured he'd like the artwork. He watched me open them, then asked why the little turtle guy wasn't in more of them. I explained chase cards and pull rates. He nodded, told me he used to collect baseball cards as a kid, and asked if I was coming back next week. On my way out, I handed him a booster pack and told him it was the beginning of his collection. I had no idea how right I was. At the card shop that week, he picked packs based entirely on which ones had the best art on the wrapper. A collector nearby shook his head and explained pull rates and probability. Grandpa listened, thanked him, and immediately pulled the chase card, set it on the counter, then asked if the little spiky mouse was in the set. He kept buying packs that way, kept pulling chase cards. By my next visit, he had a binder full of cards I'd never seen in person. I tried to explain what he had. He nodded politely and asked again about the turtle. When a local tournament came up, I built him a deck and walked him in. A kid spent 5 minutes breaking down the rules before their match. Grandpa won, thanked him for the explanation, and told me on the way out he still wasn't totally sure how the game worked. That win qualified him for regionals. I signed him up and told him it was just a bigger version of the local. He asked if he should bring the turtle card he'd finally found. I said yes. He went in like always, made the top bracket, and walking out he asked if I wanted lunch. I pulled up the leaderboards and showed him his ranking. He barely glanced at it. You know, I don't really care about any of that. I asked what he meant. He shrugged. I just like hanging out with you, kid. He'd learned an entire card game and beaten half the region without once caring if he won. I thought about that booster pack I handed him on the way out the door. The beginning of his collection, I'd said. I didn't know he was collecting something else entirely. My twin brother texted me at 6:48 p.m. My date will be there at 7. Her name is Claire. Please pretend to be me. He was stuck 3 states away. His flight wasn't moving, and I had 13 minutes with zero information. Claire knocked at 7:02, holding 2 grocery bags. I got everything on your list, she said, walking past me into the kitchen. Shallots, good olive oil, fresh pasta, everything for your grandmother's carbonara. She set the bags down and smiled. I've been thinking about this all week. I rubbed my face, trying to remember what a shallot was. Right, I said, the carbonara. She tied on an apron and looked at me expectantly while I opened the bag and stared at it like a crime scene. I found pasta, which was the full extent of my knowledge, then put a pot on the stove and turned every burner to high because I didn't know which knob matched which flame. You okay? I nearly dropped the spatula, just getting in the zone. Under the counter, I texted my brother. What is a shallot? Claire told me about her week while I nodded, sweated, and dumped the pasta in before the water boiled because I needed to look busy. She stopped mid-sentence. Did you just put pasta in cold water? I stood straighter. I do it differently. It's a texture thing. She raised her eyebrow at me. Your grandmother taught you that? The shallot rolled off the cutting board onto the floor. She was unconventional. I survived 20 more minutes by asking questions whenever she looked at the stove and refilling her wine whenever she looked at me. The carbonara came out as a pale clump. I plated in 2 bowls like a small surrender. She took 1 bite, chewed slowly, then brought her napkin to her mouth and politely spit the food out. This is exactly how my ex made it, she said. He couldn't cook either. I put my fork down and put both of my hands on the table. Claire, I have to tell you something. She picked up her wine. I know. I froze. Matthew is lactose intolerant, she said. There's half a cup of Parmesan in that carbonara. She swirled her glass. I figured it out around the shallots. My mouth hung open in shock. You're funnier than him, she said. Same face though. A 6'7" basketball player at our school pointed at the 2-foot guy on our bench and laughed. Bro, I know I just transferred to this school, but why's he even on the team? Bristol slid off the bench, barely cleared the giant's knee, and said, I challenge your to a one-on-one. First to 5. Loser buys the other lunch the rest of the year. The giant grinned and responded, easy. We all felt bad because no one ever played Bristol before, and none of us knew what to expect. They ran out to the court, and the giant scored the first bucket shooting straight over Bristol's head, like he wasn't even there. Soon the score was 4-0, and he held the ball high above Bristol's head and grinned. Come reach for it, little man. He made Bristol struggle to get the ball for 2 whole minutes before he finally rolled it to him. Here, consider this charity, little one. Bristol bounced the ball once, twice, and his whole face went cold. He slipped between the giant's legs, and in seconds he had the ball going through the hoop. He spun past him for the next one, and the next. Then he crossed him so hard, the giant slipped and sat down on the floor, and Bristol walked in the layup. We all had our eyes glued to the court, none of us on our phones, and the score was 4-4. The giant stomped his large foot on the ground. You got lucky! The whole gym leaned forward in their seats, and one kid was even eating popcorn. Bristol dribbled to the top, looked up at a rim 10 feet above him, and took off. He went up, and somehow threw it down with both hands. The backboard was still shaking, and I was on my feet screaming with everyone else. Bristol's been sitting on that bench for 2 years, and none of us knew that we'd end up feeling sorry for the wrong guy. The giant bought Bristol lunch every day after that, and on the first day he He picked him up, stood him on top of the bench, and sat down on the floor at his feet. For that second, the smallest kid in the whole school was looking down at the giant. I shot up out of bed the second I heard glass shattering, grabbed my trusty bat from underneath, and flew down the stairs before I could think. A shattered vase was spread across the floor, and my dog's crate sat wide open, empty. I called Biscuit's name through the whole house and got nothing back. Then I spotted a cracked phone glowing in the broken glass, dropped by whoever knocked the vase over running out. The screen had one message on it: bring the Frenchie to the warehouse on Lowell by 6. I jumped up and down in my kitchen. This is sick. This is literally John Wick. So I tossed the bat aside, dropped onto the couch, and watched the whole movie again to pump myself up. Then I threw on my only suit and tie, slid on a pair of blacked out shades, and spun a pencil once before holstering it in my jacket like a gun. They have no idea who they just messed with. Every last one of them is about to face my wrath. I pushed through the warehouse door, and the first guy charged me, so I threw the hardest punch of my life, missed, and hit the wall behind him. While I shook out my hand, he wound up to swing, so I flinched and tripped into a stack of pallets. They toppled onto his head and knocked him out cold. I cracked my neck like I'd meant to do that. Another guy pulled a gun, but right as he aimed, my cheap suit pants split down the back. I bent down to check just as he fired, so the bullet sailed over my head, pinged off a metal pole, and ricocheted back into him. He crumpled to the floor crying. I followed the barking to a cage in the back, guarded by the biggest man I'd ever seen. He lifted me off the floor by my collar while my legs kicked at nothing, but Biscuit shoved his squeaky bone through the bars. The giant stepped back onto it, and 400 pounds came down on his own head. I grabbed Biscuit and held him tight. Then the boss rounded the corner with a gun, so I panicked and threw my pencil as hard as I could, just like the movie. It missed by a mile, clipped a propane tank, and the blast sent him through the window into the night sky like a rocket. The place caught fire, so I carried Biscuit out, and the second we cleared the door, the warehouse exploded behind us, and I never looked back. I didn't land a single punch in there, but when people ask how one guy leveled a warehouse and got his dog back, I fix my tie and say I trained for it. I grabbed my yellow helmet at the end of my shift, but it wouldn't come off. I felt it with my fingers and found a ridge of dried glue sealing it to my hair. I heard someone laughing behind me and turned around to see my coworker Raymond filming me with the super glue tube clipped to his belt. Dude, I totally got you, but this was my final straw. Over the last few years, he'd cut the brakes on my motorbike, flirted with my girlfriend in front of me, all in the name of a prank. But this was too far. I drove home with the helmet still glued on. I tried dish soap to get it off, then cooking oil, then ice down my neck, but the glue wouldn't budge. By midnight, there was only one thing left to try. I plugged in the clippers and ran them up my own skull, watching years of hair drop into the sink until the helmet slid free. The bald guy in the mirror stared back at me. Tomorrow we're gonna get his ass. Next morning, I walked onto the site bald, hat in hand, and when Raymond saw me, he couldn't resist laughing. Dude, you look like a bowling ball. And while he was keeled over, distracted by his own prank, I quickly clogged up the tube of super glue he had on his tool belt. When he was done, he pulled it off and crouched behind the new kid's chair, getting ready to prank him too. But when he squeezed, nothing came out. He squeezed harder, shook it, and peeked into the hole with one eye. What's going on? He tried again, and suddenly the tube burst across his hand in a thick white rope. He wiped it on the new kid's sleeve, but his fingers stuck fast. The kid tore away. Raymond grabbed the rail to catch himself, but his palm welded to the bar. He grabbed his phone for help, but it bonded to his palm, screen out, still filming his own face. Guys, get it off, get it off. One by one, the crew pulled out their phones and filmed the man who'd filmed all of them. I walked over, didn't touch him, and pointed. Dude, I totally got you. The cop grabbed my skateboard out of my hands, snapped it in half over his knee, and threw it in the trunk like it was a weapon. I was 17, walking home from the gas station with my board under one arm. You kids think sidewalks are racetracks, he said. I'm not even riding it. That was all I got out before he screamed, "Stop resisting," and hit me chest first into the pavement. My cheek scraped concrete. His knee dug into my back. He cuffed me so tight my fingers started buzzing. Then he held up a citation and smiled. $30 for riding after dark. He shoved me into the back seat and slammed the door. The cruiser smelled like old coffee and sweat. He kept my skateboard in the trunk and kept tapping the steering wheel, singing terrible country music over the radio, drifting over the yellow line like the road belonged to him. Then he pulled into a bar parking lot. I sat up straight. This isn't the station. He looked at me in the rearview mirror. I need to investigate something. He locked the doors and went inside. For 2 hours, I sat cuffed in the back seat, watching people come and go under the neon sign. When he finally came out, he stumbled once, caught himself, and opened the driver's door. The whole car filled with the smell of alcohol. I started yelling before he shifted into drive. Call another officer. You can't drive. He turned the radio up. He rolled through the first red light and he blew straight through the next. I kicked the partition with both feet, but he just sang louder. Then headlights filled my window. A semi-horn blasted so loud it shook the glass. The cop yelled, jerked the wheel, and the whole cruiser folded sideways around the impact. I woke up in the hospital surrounded by beeping machines. I tried to sit up. Nothing moved under the blanket. Not my knees, not my feet. I was paralyzed. They made me pay $30 for riding a skateboard after dark. The cop paid me $3 million because I never rode one again. My most down bad friend Catalan jumped onto the lunch table and shouted, "Say nothing if you want me." The whole cafeteria went dead silent. He looked down at me, hands on his hips, grinning. Hear that? That's the sound of a room that wants me. He hopped off the table and strolled toward his crush like he owned the floor. The second she figured out what was going on, she shot out of her chair and started screaming at the top of her lungs. Catalan closed his eyes and nodded. That's fine. There's plenty of fish in the sea. He looked around for his next victim, and that's when the entire cafeteria erupted into noise. He started spinning around the room, looking for anyone who was still quiet, and that's when his eyes locked on the back corner. The lunch lady stood at the register in her hairnet, scrolling her phone, not making any noise because she didn't know what was going on. Catalan's grin stretched wide as he pointed at her over everyone's heads. She didn't scream. You know what that means. No, there was no way. He started walking, and the whole room turned to watch. The lunch lady looked up, saw a teenager spreading his arms at her, and screamed louder than the whole cafeteria combined. She stumbled back into the soda machine and jabbed her finger at him. "Gerald! Gerald! We got one!" Catalan put his hand on her shoulder and started stroking. "There's no need to worry, baby girl, Papa's home." Suddenly, Gerald, the security guard, spun Catalan around and walked him to the doors. Gerald marched him towards the cafeteria door, and Catalan contorted his body backwards to point at her, yelling, "I'll wait for you, my love. I know you want me, and someday we will be together again." No one's seen him since. I was one jump from a new high score in Jetpack Joyride when Mom snatched the iPad out of my hands. Dad towered over me. "You've been playing for 8 hours straight. Go touch grass." My friends groaned from the couch as Mom locked the iPad in a drawer and pocketed the key. "If I somehow see you on this iPad again, you're grounded until college." But as soon as they walked off, I grinned at my friends because I wasn't done flying yet. I led them to my dad's garage, and I strapped 2 leaf blowers to a hiking backpack, taping the whole rig down tight. I will be beating my high score, iPad or no iPad. One of my friends grabbed the straps while I climbed in and hit both triggers. The blowers screamed and knocked me flat on the grass. My friend shouted, "Angle them down, not back." So I aimed the nozzles down and taped a skateboard to my shoes. Every test pushed me higher, a foot up, then level with the porch rail. We had 30 minutes before my parents came back home, and I was determined to beat my Jetpack Joyride high score. I waved everyone goodbye and squeezed both triggers as hard as I could. My feet left the grass. The blowers roared, and I shot up over the roof, high enough to see the whole street. My friends screamed from the lawn, but right as I started counting my jumps through the air, I saw my parents pulling into the driveway. Mom and Dad climbed out and stared up at me. Dad pulled out his phone, and my hands locked on the triggers because I thought he was calling the police. But then I saw he was filming, grinning so wide I saw it from the sky. "How high can you get this thing?" Mom cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted up at me, "Make 2 more." I didn't stay in the air long enough to beat my high score, but every Saturday me and my parents fly over the rooftops. I beat them every time, and my dad hasn't told me to touch grass since. My daughter took out her extremely short shorts from her shopping bag. "Look, Dad, aren't these cute? All the girls in my new school wear stuff like this." My face drained of color as she kept going with her shopping haul, because she started pulling out extremely cropped crop tops, sports bras, and short skirts. I opened up her wardrobe. "Honey, those are extremely inappropriate. Plus, I thought you loved your jeans and maxi skirts." She crossed her arms. "I don't see a problem with them, Dad. Stop being so controlling." I sighed because my daughter was giving into peer pressure, and I had no idea how to prove my point to her. Until 2 days later, when I heard her on the phone promising her new friends she'd be at the party on Saturday. That day, I ordered an outfit from Amazon in a size XXS that looked exactly like what my daughter was wearing. When Saturday evening came, she left the house in the shortest blue shorts I'd seen yet, paired with a tube top. I waited an hour before I started driving to the party my daughter was at, wearing the same short blue shorts and tube top she'd worn that day. And as soon as I walked in, the whole party turned to me, and I saw my daughter at the front completely red. Everyone watched as she stormed over to me. "Dad, did you come here in short shorts just to humiliate me and prove a point about a stupid outfit?" I put my hands on my hips and did my best girl voice. "What? They're not even that short?" A few seconds later, someone finally broke the silence and burst out laughing. A girl in the back said, "This is totally something my dad would do." The girl that looked like she was popular smiled. "Maybe this shorts trend is a little weird." My daughter laughed nervously, and I wasn't sure if I just cooked our relationship or not. But the next morning while getting dressed for school, she took out the jeans buried in the back of her closet. "I guess these are pretty cute too." I made one bird noise at lunch, and Sean threw a chicken nugget at my face. Everyone at the table had dared me to do the hawk again, so I tipped my head back and let it rip across the cafeteria. For one perfect second, even the lunch ladies froze. Sean picked up a nugget, fired it across the table, and hit me on the cheek. "Do a real talent, bird boy." I could copy any bird in the state. Red-tailed hawk, mourning dove, the angry blue jay outside my window. Even the ostrich boom that sounded so fake my dad had laughed until he coughed. Nobody cared. They just wanted the show. So I shoved my tray away while Sean flapped both arms and squawked into his milk carton. That weekend, our class took a bus to a petting farm for the spring trip. Sean spent the whole ride pecking the air beside my ear until the teacher moved him 3 seats back. We were halfway through the goat pen when a gate banged open behind the barn. Nobody had mentioned an ostrich. It came around the corner at full speed, neck stretched out, feet hammering dirt, headed straight for the little kids lined up by the fence. A farmhand sprinted after it waving a rake. The ostrich kicked once, and he crashed backward into a hay bale. A teacher tried to block it with both arms out, but the bird hissed and swung one huge foot toward her knee. Sean climbed the fence so fast his jacket ripped on the wire. The little kids backed into the corner, crying against the boards, and the whole class went still. My mouth went dry. I knew that hiss. I had practiced ostrich sounds for a week from a nature video because nobody believed a bird that big could boom like a drum. I cupped both hands around my mouth and made the deep call an ostrich uses when it's trying to gather its young. The ostrich's head snapped toward me. I did it again. It forgot the fence, forgot the kids, and walked straight at me, rumbling back with every step. My knees shook so hard my shoes scraped the dirt, but I kept calling until the farmhand looped a rope around its neck. The goat pen stayed silent. Sean climbed down from the fence, jacket hanging off one shoulder. "Do the hawk," he said. So I did. The little kids laughed first. This time, nobody threw anything. 2 idiots in matching outfits walked into my police station. "We're here to report a missing car." They slid a piece of paper across the table, and it was a crayon drawing of a car with an X through it. "This is our report." I sighed. This was going to be a long day. I offered to retrace their route, but Idiot 1 held up a finger like he'd cracked the case. "If we want to find the car, we have to think like one." Idiot 2 nodded slowly, eyes wide. "Yes, and if I was a car, I'd want to be at a gas station." Before I could answer, they bolted out the door and headed for the Shell station across the lot. By the time I caught up, Idiot 1 had a diesel nozzle to his lips. "What are you doing?" Idiot 2 held up his hand. "Wait, he's trying to act like a car so we know how to find it. Let him cook." Idiot 2 then grabbed his own diesel nozzle and started to chug. I was dialing 911 when both of them hit the pavement gagging, and they were both green in the face. I dropped to my knees between them, and Idiot 2 lifted a shaking arm and pointed. Look, it worked. I turned and their car had actually shown up out of nowhere. The ambulance was 2 minutes away when Idiot 1 patted his butt and said, "Hold on a second, I can't find my phone." Idiot 2 gasped. "You know what that means. We have to go to the Apple store." They sprinted to their car and sped off before I could stop them. My mom ran across the field and got in the ref's face. "Are you blind? That was a foul. How did you get certified, ref?" I dropped my head and stared at my cleats. My friend jogged over from his position. "Dude, is this why you said you used to love soccer? She does this every game? Since I was 8. In all that time, no one had ever stopped her. But through the commotion, a man in a league polo tucked a clipboard under his arm and started walking over. The ref ignored her and started signaling for play to resume. "You should be fired!" When he kept ignoring her, she turned on me instead. "Stop standing around! That's why he didn't call it!" The other parents went quiet, and a few moved their chairs down the line. The man with the clipboard stopped beside the ref. "Ma'am, Tom Reyes, State Commissioner. I've been timing your behavior for 3 games. She let out a laugh and waved him off. "You can't sideline me. My husband donates to this league. Donations don't override parent conduct. You signed it." He held out a printed sheet. She wouldn't take it, so he set it down on the grass. "You're suspended from every state-affiliated youth soccer field for 1 calendar year, including your son's." The officials walked her off, and the whistle blew. I kept glancing at her chair out of habit, but it was empty every time. After the game, my coach pulled me aside. "You played different today." I'd never played a game without trying not to disappoint her. It was the first time I just played soccer. I tore open my only Christmas present, and my eyes lit up when I saw the Pokemon pack in my hands. But when I ran into school with it, my friends were already sitting in a circle ripping theirs open. "Guys, I finally got a pack." I held it up smiling and went to sit down, but Alex instantly pushed me out of their circle. "How many packs do you have?" "Only this one." Alex shook his head while the others laughed. "You need at least 3 for a real pack opening. You'll only slow us down. You can't open with us." He turned around and carelessly ripped his 10th pack open, and I felt my heart break. I watched them toss their unwanted cards to the side and walked to my desk with my 1 pack. I sat down alone and opened it with shaking hands. I peeled back the foil and carefully slid the cards out. A shiny Charizard stared back at me. Before I could even react, Alex screamed from behind me, "Holy crap, Ben just pulled a shiny Charizard." The whole circle instantly swarmed my desk. "Oh my god." Matt suddenly dragged some chairs over, and the whole circle sat around me. "You can play with us, dude. You just pulled a Charizard." Alex tipped his bag of chips my way. "Take as many as you want." Ryan and Brian spread their decks across my desk. "What do you think, man? Any good?" I sat in the middle of the circle holding my shiny Charizard and couldn't stop smiling. We played for the entire day, my Charizard crushing impressing everyone. Alex high-fived me, and Matt called me genuinely cool. I walked home that Friday still buzzing, but then I saw Mom at the kitchen table. Bills were spread out in front of her. I secretly looked up the value of the Charizard on my phone. $3,500. I thought about how my friends loved me because of my card, then sold it anyway. I tucked the money in chunks around the house so Mom would never know it came from me, and walked into school without it. Alex immediately waved me over. "Where's your Charizard?" I told him I sold it to help with bills, and the whole circle instantly gasped. Alex shook his head. "Why would we even hang out with you then?" He grabbed the friendship bracelet he'd given me off my wrist and turned around, closing the circle so I couldn't get in. But this time I didn't care, because now I knew they never wanted me. They wanted my card, and Mom getting to eat was more important than the approval of fake friends.